All right, let's get into it. Today, we're talking about something that seems kind of old school, but is actually incredibly technical. Tuning a motorcycle carburetor. And you've got to understand, getting this right isn't just about a little extra power. No, this is about the survival of your engine, where one tiny mistake can lead to total disaster. And believe me, that is not an exaggeration. We're talking about a little piece of brass with a hole drilled through it. A mistake smaller than the tip of a pen can be the only thing standing between you and a melted piston. Yeah, the stakes are really high. So what's the goal here? What are we even trying to do? Well, it's all about getting that perfect, and I mean perfect, mix of air and fuel into the engine. You can think of this mixture as the absolute lifeblood for combustion. And the carburetor? That's the mechanical heart that's got to pump it just right. For regular gasoline, the magic number, the chemically perfect ratio, is right around 15 parts air to 1 part fuel. It's like a recipe for a cake. You know, if you get it just right, it's amazing. But if you put in way too much flour or not enough sugar, you've completely ruined it. Same idea here, but with much more expensive consequences.
Now, you can mess this recipe up in two ways, but they are not equal at all. On one hand, you can run rich, which means too much fuel. Your brake's going to run kind of sluggish, maybe foul up the spark plugs. It's annoying for sure, but it's not going to destroy your engine. But if you run lean, that means too much air, the temperature inside that cylinder goes through the roof. We're talking hot enough to literally melt the aluminum piston and seize the entire engine. It is a razor-thin line, and one side of it leads straight to catastrophe.
So how in the world do we actually control this critical fuel ratio? Well, this is where we get into the real nitty-gritty of the process. It's called carburetor jetting.
You know, jetting is this really hands-on mechanical art of fine-tuning that fuel mix. It literally means you're taking the carb apart and swapping out these tiny little brass screws called jets. Each one has a perfectly drilled hole in it, and the size of that hole is what controls how much fuel gets sucked into the engine when you twist the throttle. But a carburetor isn't just one simple valve. It's actually more like 3 different systems or circuits that all have to work together to give the engine what it needs across the whole RPM range. Let's break that down.
Okay, so first up, from when the bike is just sitting there at idle to about a quarter turn of the throttle, that's the pilot jet's job. It handles all the low-speed stuff. Then, as you roll on the throttle more, say from a quarter to 3/4 of the way, this long tapered needle called a jet needle lifts up and down, controlling the fuel flow for most of your normal riding. And finally, when you just pin it, wide open throttle, the main jet becomes the star of the show. It decides the absolute maximum amount of fuel the engine can possibly get. And because all those circuits kind of overlap and affect each other, you have to tune them in a specific order. You can't just jump into the middle. The right way to do it is to start with the idle circuit first, then you jump all the way to the other extreme, wide open throttle, to get your main jet right. It's only after you've nailed down both ends of the spectrum that you can go back and fine-tune that tricky mid-range.
But how do you even know if you're getting it right? Well, the spark plug will tell you everything. It's the ultimate truth teller. After you do a test run, you pull the plug out and you read the color on the tip. If it's a nice light tan, kind of like coffee with cream, you are in the money. That's the sweet spot. If it's bone white, you're dangerously lean. And if it's all black and sooty, you're way too rich. It's like a simple, amazing window right into your engine. So far, this all sounds pretty logical, right? You figure out what's wrong, you know which part you need, you swap it out, easy. But this is where this whole story takes a really sharp and honestly deceptive turn. I mean, it seems like the most obvious thing in the world, right? If your bike is running lean and you need more fuel, you just buy a jet with a bigger number on it. If you need less fuel, you buy one with a smaller number. Simple as that. Yeah, that little number stamped on the brass is supposed to be a standardized measurement. It's supposed to tell you exactly how much fuel that jet will flow. A jet stamped 190 should flow more gas than a jet stamped 180. That's the basic assumption everyone, and I mean everyone, works with. And this is the million-dollar question. This is where it all gets a little bit crazy.
So here's the kicker. That number on the jet can be a flat-out lie. A mechanical engineer named Martin Kielch actually measured the real flow rates of a bunch of jets, and what he found is pretty shocking. Get this, he tested a Mikuni jet that was labeled as 195, and it actually flowed like 168. A different brand labeled 180 flowed like 173. I mean, think about that. Because of tiny differences in manufacturing, you could put in what you think is a bigger jet and actually be making your engine leaner, dangerously leaner.
So Kilch's final advice is basically a huge warning sign for every single mechanic out there. You just cannot trust the numbers stamped on the part. The only thing you can possibly trust is what the engine tells you. You have to do the testing, read the plugs, feel how it runs, and find what actually works, no matter what the label says.
And that brings us to the last really critical idea here. Jetting doesn't just happen in a vacuum. A carburetor is only one piece of a much bigger, much more complicated and interconnected system.
See, if you change anything that affects how the engine breathes, you have to change how it eats. For example, just bolting on a new exhaust pipe completely changes the game. A high-performance race pipe might give you a bunch more horsepower, but all that extra airflow it creates means the engine is now screaming for more fuel to go with it. So you have to install much bigger jets just to keep it from running lean and blowing up.
And oh, it doesn't stop there. Are you riding at sea level, or are you up in the mountains? Because the air is thinner up there, so you need less fuel. Is it a hot and humid summer day, or a cool, crisp autumn morning? Even the type of air filter you're using, or the kind of gas in your tank can throw that perfect ratio off. Every single one of these things changes the entire equation.
So the main thing to take away from all this is that proper jetting is a whole body problem. It's not about one number on one little part. It's a living, breathing balance. It's this delicate dance between the rider, the machine, and the physics of the world around it. It's part science, sure, but it's also a whole lot of art and feel. Which kind of leaves us with one last thing to chew on. You know, modern bikes, they don't have this problem. They use computers, fuel injectors, and sensors to get that perfect mix automatically, every time. And yeah, it's way more efficient, it's more reliable, no question. But in fixing the problem, did we maybe lose something along the way? Is this painstaking, hands-on, analog process, this dance with physics, is it an art form that we should fight to keep alive? That's something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.